Chapter 1. The Fishing Village and the Rumors. On the desolate central coast, there was a small fishing village nestled at the foot of a rocky mountain. By day, the fishermen went out to sea to cast their nets. But by night, the entire village huddled together inside their thatched huts, leaning close as if to hide from the darkness spilling out from the vast ocean. For as long as anyone could remember, the villagers passed down a forbidden tale, about 3 nautical miles from shore. On nights of dim moonlight, a strange boat would appear, empty of people, yet drifting slowly through the mist. It was neither entirely a boat, nor entirely a ghost, but something more monstrous. People called it by a chilling name, the ghost ship. Those curious enough to row out and see it never returned. From time to time, after violent storms, broken pieces of blackened wood would wash ashore, reeking of a stench so foul that it seemed to come from the pits of the sea itself. The elders always warned the children, never go to the sea at night. If the sea calls your name, you will never return. Some of the younger fishermen scoffed, thinking it was just a tale to frighten children. But even they, on late-night fishing trips, swore they had heard the sound of oars striking water, and the creak of wooden planks as if another boat were passing by, though nothing but endless night and waves surrounded them. Once, old Non, the eldest fisherman, recounted his tale in the village tavern. Greater than, I've seen it myself, a rotten ship. Wood decayed, yet somehow still sailing with its torn sails in the wind. Nets hung from the deck, dripping with blood, and I swear I saw a figure seated at the bow, unmoving. Before I could look closer, the mist swallowed it whole. If not for the strong wind that carried my boat away, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you this. After his story, the tavern fell into silence. Only the sound of the sea wind whistling through the cracks remained, cold and hollow as a dying breath. Though no one admitted it, fear hung heavy in every man's heart. The legend of the ghost ship became an invisible shadow looming over the village. No one dared sail out on moonless nights. They whispered that the ship carried bound souls, the dead of the sea, doomed to steer the cursed vessel through eternal storms. That night, a new moon hid behind thick clouds. Mist rose from the sea, blanketing the shore in white. On the beach, a few oil lamps flickered weakly. And there, in the darkness, stood a young man, eyes glimmering with curiosity. He had decided to uncover the truth of the ghost ship. Chapter 2. The stormy night. The ship appears in the mist. That night, the wind suddenly rose. Dark clouds gathered from the horizon, covering the faint crescent moon. The sea, no longer calm, roared with waves, each one crashing onto the shore in foamy white bursts. The sound of the surf blended with the howling wind, like cries from the underworld. Inside a small thatched hut, a young man named Hao, the one who had decided to uncover the truth about the ghost ship, lay restless. Unable to sleep, he heard the wind, his heart pounding violently. A strange urge welled inside him, as though someone were whispering his name from out at sea. Hao grabbed his thick cloth jacket, held his storm lantern, and slipped quietly onto the beach. The village slept soundly, leaving only him standing before the ominous ocean. Ahead, the waves pounded, and beyond, a dense fog began to rise. Greater than, if the ghost ship truly exists, I will see it tonight, Hao muttered. His small bamboo boat left the shore, rocking violently with each swell. Every stroke of the oar sent a chill crawling down his spine. Seawater sprayed his face, salty and stinging, yet he pressed forward into the wall of mist. The farther he went, the quieter it became. The sound of the waves faded, replaced by a dreadful stillness. Then came a sound, the creak of wood somewhere close by. Hao froze, lifting his head. Through the suffocating fog, a massive silhouette emerged. It was an ancient, decayed ship, its hull charred black in patches as though burned. Torn sails flapped in the wind, their sound like cloth tearing in anguish. Hao's breath caught, the lantern in his hand flickered, its weak glow falling across the deck. There, shadowy figures stood. They faced the sea, motionless. Under the dim light, their faces appeared waxen pale, their eyes hollow, dark voids staring straight at Hao. Suddenly, thunder cracked across the sky. The wind howled louder. The ship swayed, groaning with a sound like mournful wailing. In that instant, Hao heard a whisper right beside his ear. Greater than, closer, come closer. "You have been chosen." Hao's trembling hands clutched the oar, but an unseen force seemed to drag his boat toward the ghostly vessel. The mist thickened, erasing all paths back. A bolt of lightning split the heavens, and in its glare, Hao saw the horror upon the deck, bodies hanging from ropes. Swaying in the wind, the ropes groaned, dripping seawater like cold blood. That vessel, the ghost ship, had revealed itself. And now, Hao had no way back. Chapter 3. Fisherman mysteriously missing. By morning, the storm had passed, the sky turned clear once more, and the sea lay calm as though no fury had ever raged. Yet in the fishing village, the air was heavy with dread. Word spread quickly. 3 fishermen had not returned that night. They were young men who often went out late to set their nets. Their boat was found washed back to shore, but empty, completely abandoned. One side of the hull was shattered, splintered as though clawed in desperation. On the deck, long scratch marks gouged into the wood, like someone had raked their nails in terror. Stranger still, the anchor rope was severed, not cut by a blade, but chewed apart, as if gnawed by some unseen thing. The families of the missing fishermen wailed, demanding their bodies be found. A group of young men rowed out to search, but as soon as they reached the area 3 nautical miles out, they were engulfed in a thick, white fog. The sound of their oars echoed, then vanished into the void. When the group returned, their faces were pale as death, eyes wild with fear. Not one of them spoke a word, only shook their heads violently. Old Nan watched them, sighing hoarsely. Greater than, it has returned. The ghost ship has chosen its prey. That afternoon, in the tavern, the villagers gathered, whispering anxiously. Some swore they had seen flickering lights at sea the night before, like lanterns hung upon a ship's deck. Others swore they heard the beat of funeral drums, carried by the wind. Meanwhile, Hao remained silent the entire day. His face was ashen, his eyes vacant, haunted by the memory of the hollow faces on the ship and the whisper that had beckoned him. Had it not been for the lightning flash and a sudden wave that hurled his small boat back toward shore, he too would have vanished like the 3 young men. But deep inside, Hao felt a growing terror. He knew something from that ship was still watching him. That night, lying in the dark of his hut, Hao heard it, knocks against his window. Rhythmic and hollow, like wood tapping against wood. Knock, knock, knock. He pulled the blanket over his head, trembling, but the sound persisted, mingling with the crash of waves against the cliffs, as though calling his name. In the darkness, Hao knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 4. The Curse of the Sea and the Ancient Legend. In the fishing village, whenever someone went missing, the people always turned to Old Nan, the eldest fisherman, a living treasury of stories passed down through generations. That night, in his small hut, the oil lamp flickered, casting his long shadow on the mud wall. Hao and a few young men sat around him, faces tense with unease. Old Nan sipped a mouthful of rice wine, then spoke in his hoarse voice. Greater than, do you know why they call that vessel the ghost ship? It does not appear by chance. It is the result of an ancient curse. All eyes fixed on him. The air thickened, and only the whistle of the sea wind through the shutters could be heard. He told them, more than 100 years ago, a foreign merchant fleet came through these waters. They carried treasures, gold, silver, and gems, but greed lured local pirates to attack. Slaughtering them all, the sea turned red with blood. The pirates seized the treasure, but among the cargo was a strange wooden chest, carved with unfamiliar symbols. From the moment they opened it, misfortunes befell the village. Fishermen vanished at sea. Storms arose on clear nights. The waves grew restless without reason. At last, the pirate ship itself sank in a storm unlike any seen before. Yet instead of disappearing, it returned as a ghostly vessel, cursed and filled with wailing souls. On nights of dim moonlight, it rose from the depths, carrying the cries of the slain. Greater than, they say whoever sees it, or hears the knocking on its deck, is already marked. The sea has called their name. Old Nan's voice dropped low. The hut fell into silence. Hao's heart pounded wildly. He remembered the knocking at his window, the hollow eyes staring at him from the mist. If the old man's words were true, then Hao had already been chosen. Outside, the sea wind howled louder, like the mocking laughter of drowned souls. Hao clenched his fists. cold sweat trickling down his back. He understood. If he wanted to escape this fate, he had to uncover the truth, even if it cost him his life. Chapter 5. Bloodstains on the wooden deck. 2 days after the 3 fishermen vanished, the sea seemed calmer than usual. The surface lay still like a giant silver mirror beneath the dim moonlight. Yet this eerie calm only deepened the villagers' unease. For they knew, before disaster struck, the sea always fell silent. That night, Hao could no longer restrain his curiosity. He rowed his small boat into the waters the villagers feared. Old Nan's warning echoed in his mind. He who hears the knocking on the deck has already been chosen by the sea. Mist thickened as he pushed further out. His storm lantern lit only a few steps ahead. The deeper he rowed, the heavier the stench became, not the salty smell of fish, but the metallic, clotted reek of old blood. Then suddenly, a massive shadow loomed through the fog. It was the very ship Hao had seen before, ancient and rotting, yet towering and alive with a chilling aura. Hao swallowed hard, edging his little boat alongside. His hand trembled as it touched the hull, slimy, soaked, and covered in moss, yet in some places, the wood was unnaturally dark, as though soaked with something far worse. He lifted his lantern closer. The faint glow revealed long, twisted stains soaked deep into the planks. They were bloodstains, old, but still red-black, as though freshly spilled. Above, the wind whistled through frayed ropes, producing a sound like moaning. Then, suddenly, drops of dark liquid fell from above, dripping onto the deck. Hao raised his head, and his heart nearly stopped. From the mast, a body hung upside down, its long hair dangling, face pale as wax, eyes bulging open. Blood trickled from its mouth, dripping steadily onto the planks below. Hao staggered back in horror. But then, behind him, through the mist, came another sound. Thud, thud, thud. Footsteps, heavy, dragging, coming closer, from the dark belly of the ship. His lantern flickered once, then went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Only the sound of footsteps remained, mingling with the suffocating stench of blood. In that moment, Hao understood he was no longer alone on the ship. Chapter 6. The Curious Youth and the Decision to Board. The footsteps dragged closer, echoing in the suffocating dark. Hao's heart hammered against his ribs, his whole body drenched in cold sweat. He wanted to row away, to flee, but his limbs were frozen, as though nailed in place. A thought flashed through his mind: if I keep running, the sea will never spare me. I must face it. Clutching his lantern, Hao struck the flame once more. Its dim glow revealed the blood-stained deck. The footsteps suddenly stopped, vanished into silence. But that silence was even more terrifying. He took a deep breath, trembling hand on the rotting rail. The wood felt cold and slimy, like the flesh of the dead. Then, summoning every shred of courage, Hao set foot on the deck of the ghost ship. The instant his foot touched the planks, the entire vessel shuddered, as if alive. A frigid gust swept through, whipping the tattered sails into shrieking tatters. Hao felt he had crossed an unseen boundary, leaving the world of the living for a realm of the damned. The deck was empty, yet reeked of life and death intertwined. Nets sagged under moss, tangled with pale shards of bone. Ropes coiled across the beams like shackles binding prisoners. At the bow, Hao spotted a low wooden table. On it lay an old compass. Its needle did not point north but spun wildly before settling, always toward the black abyss beyond the fog. Each time it moved, a whisper hissed through the air. Greater than, go on, deeper still, to the very end of the sea. Hao's throat tightened. He wanted to retreat, but behind him the mist thickened, swallowing all escape. His small boat was nowhere to be seen, as though it had never existed. Biting his lip until blood welled, Hao muttered to himself, greater than, if the sea has called my name, then I must learn what it wants. Step by trembling step, he descended into the shadowed stairwell. The planks groaned beneath him, echoing like the heartbeat of some vast, unseen beast. And then, as his foot reached the lower rung, a door creaked open on its own, revealing a corridor of utter blackness. From within came the sound of a woman's weeping, mingled with hollow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. The ghost ship had swallowed Hao whole, and his journey into its depths had only just begun. Chapter 7. The Journey into a Night with No Escape. The wooden door creaked open, revealing a long corridor stretching into darkness. A damp, putrid stench rushed out, thick with mold and the iron tang of blood. The lantern's wavering glow illuminated moss-covered walls. The timber soaked as though the ship had lain 100 years beneath the sea. Hal hesitated, but then drew a sharp breath and stepped inside. Instantly, the door slammed shut behind him, echoing like a coffin lid. His chest tightened, there was no way back. His footsteps resounded hollowly down the corridor. Yet every time he stopped, he heard a second set of footsteps, slow and heavy, following just behind. He spun around, only darkness. The lantern sputtered, shadows stretching across the walls. And on those walls, he saw them. Bloody handprints smeared along the planks, dragging downward as if people had clawed for their lives before being pulled away. Then came the knocking again. Knock, 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 no longer distant, but right beside his ear. Hal shivered, clamping a hand over his mouth, afraid to breathe. Suddenly, at the far end of the corridor, a faint green glow flickered. Heart-pounding, he moved toward it. It led him into a small cabin. Inside, rotting tables and chairs stood neatly arranged, as though awaiting invisible guests. On the table sat cups of wood, filled with some dark, foul liquid that reeked of decay. As he neared, one of the cups tilted and spilled, black liquid trickling across the table and dripping onto the floor. Then came the sound of laughter, shrill, mocking, and disembodied, like a crowd of unseen revelers toasting a feast. Hal staggered back, terror clawing at his chest. A frigid draft swept across his nape, lifting his hair. A deep voice whispered from directly behind him. Greater than, you have come, continue. This path is not for those who turn back. Whipping around, he saw nothing, only the dark. The lantern flickered once more, then went out. In the suffocating black, countless whispers rose, overlapping, near and far. Go on, deeper still, you cannot escape. Hal clutched the lantern, screaming hoarsely into the void. Greater than, who are you? What do you want from me? No answer came, only the roar of waves echoing from the ship's belly, mingled with the wailing of drowned souls rising from the abyss. Shaking, Hal stumbled forward, realizing he had only one path left, to walk deeper, into the heart of the darkness. Chapter 8. Cries for help amid the raging waves. Hal groped his way down to the lower deck. The wooden stairs creaked under his weight, threatening to collapse at any step. The stench grew thicker, pungent and suffocating, as if the planks themselves had absorbed blood and seawater for centuries. The lantern's dim glow revealed rows of large wooden barrels lining the walls. Some were shattered, their contents spilling out, rotting. Slimy lumps of flesh, too decayed to tell whether fish or human. Hal gagged, swallowing hard against the bile rising in his throat. Then, out of the darkness, a sound split the silence. Help me, someone, please? The voice was hoarse, weak, like someone drowning. Hal froze, pulse racing. He swung the lantern around, but saw only broken barrels and shadows. The voice came again, closer this time, beneath his feet. He looked down. The floorboards were rotted, and through their gaps, seawater bubbled up, black and thick. From the depths, a pale hand emerged, bruised and mottled, reaching, clawing for him. Before he could react, the hand clamped onto his ankle, ice cold as death. Hal screamed, staggering back, but the grip tightened, nails gouging into his skin, blood seeping into the dark water. From below the planks, a chorus of voices erupted, shrill and desperate. Don't leave us, we're drowning, save us, save us. The floor shook violently. The boards split apart as dozens of hands thrust upward, clawing, grasping. Faces surfaced between the gaps, bloated, blue, eyes bulging, mouths gaping in eternal suffocation. Hal tore himself free and bolted, splashing down a narrow passage, his heart pounding like a drum. But the cries pursued him, filling the air, echoing in his skull. You will join us, you will drown with us. A freezing gust extinguished his lantern. Darkness devoured him, only his ragged breath and the roar of the waves remained. Then, ahead, a red lantern flared to life. Its sickly glow revealed a man in a tattered sailor's coat, face pale as chalk, eyes hollow and dead. The figure stood motionless, but its lips moved, voice rasping like wind through a grave. Greater than, We are all dead already, and you will never escape." Hao stumbled back, but behind him, icy hands reached from the shadows, brushing his legs. He was trapped, caught between the past's drowned and the present's horror. Chapter 9. The Cursed Relic and the Sealed Spirit. The red lantern swayed eerily, casting a sickly glow across the corridor. The pale sailor's figure dissolved into mist, leaving only an icy breath that cut down Hao's spine. Trembling, he pressed forward until a heavy wooden door loomed before him, its surface etched with strange, moss-covered symbols. The moment his hand touched it, whispers seeped through the cracks, faint yet urgent. "You have arrived, open it, free me?" His hand shook, yet as though compelled by some unseen force. He pushed the door open. Inside, darkness pressed tight. Only a pale green light pulsed faintly at the center of the room. Hao stepped closer and froze. A massive wooden chest, drenched in moss and bound by rusted iron chains, sat upon a rotting platform. Strange characters were carved across its lid, symbols identical to those old Nan had spoken of when warning about the chest from the foreign fleet. The air reeked of blood and burnt incense. Before the chest lay a low table, scattered with grotesque offerings, bleached bone fragments, faded cloth talismans, fish eyes, fingernails, even scraps of human skin, dried and shriveled. Hao's chest tightened. This was no ordinary chest, it was a prison, a vessel to seal some ancient spirit. Suddenly, the chest rattled violently. The chains strained and groaned, threatening to snap. A hoarse voice bellowed, not from outside, but straight into Hao's mind. "Greater than, release me, set me free. I will give you the strength of the sea, you will never fear again." Pain lanced through his skull. Hao collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. As visions flooded his mind, a sea turned crimson with blood. Souls in chains dragged into the depths. A towering shadow writhing in the abyss. Eyes glowing, fixed upon him. "Greater than, you are the key? You must choose," the voice thundered. In his grip, the old compass he had picked up on deck trembled violently. Its needle spun madly, then locked, pointing straight at the chest. A ghostly green light seeped into his hand, urging him to break the seal. Sweat poured down Hao's face. He staggered backward, but the door had vanished, replaced by solid timber walls. He was trapped with the chest. The whisper returned, soft but insidious, coaxing him. "Greater than, free me, or die as those before you did. Choose." The lantern sputtered out. Only the chest remained aglow, waiting. Chapter 10. The Ghost Captain and the Compass Pointing to the Abyss. The chest shook violently, the chains screeching as though ready to burst. A ghostly green light flooded the chamber, stretching Hao's shadow grotesquely across the walls. Then, silence. Heavy footsteps echoed behind him. Hao spun around, and his heart froze. Before him stood a man in a tattered captain's coat, water dripping steadily from his ragged cloak. His face was corpse pale, skin stretched taut like wax, eyes sunken into pits of endless black. In his skeletal hand he held a great compass, far larger than the one Hao carried. Its needle did not point north, but spun wildly before fixing downward, pointing straight beneath, into the fathomless deep. The captain's voice rasped like wind through broken stones. "Greater than, you, the curious one? You dared step upon my deck. Now you are bound. There is no return." Hao trembled, clutching his lantern. Who are you?" he stammered. A twisted grin split the captain's waxen face. "Greater than, once, I was master of this vessel. A century ago, my crew and I betrayed all bonds. We plundered, killed, for treasure. But the sea does not forgive. We were cursed, drowned, bound in torment, and I became the guide, the keeper of souls, for all who come after." He raised the great compass high. Its needle whirled, glowing green, casting a beam of light that pierced straight into Hao. Immediately, Hao felt his body heavy as lead, as though the sea itself dragged him downward. His ears rang with the cries of the drowned, and the muffled pounding of funeral drums. The captain advanced, frost radiating from his form, freezing Hao's breath in his throat. He thrust the compass toward Hao's face. Voice a command of doom. "Greater than, you must descend. You must lead the way. The sea has chosen you." But suddenly, the small compass Hao had taken from the deck flared to life in his grasp. Its needle spun madly, then locked, pointing directly at the captain's chest. A flash of ghostly light burst forth, forcing the captain to recoil. Snarling like a beast, Howe realized the two compasses were linked, one pulling him down into the abyss, the other resisting, holding back the sea's grasp. A battle of forces, life against damnation. The captain's hollow face drew close, lips brushing Howe's ear, his whisper colder than the grave. Greater than, "You cannot escape. You will sink, with us all?" The floorboards beneath Howe cracked wide open. Black seawater surged up, flooding the chamber, swirling into a monstrous whirlpool. Dragged downward, Howe spun helplessly, drowning in the screams of 100 damned souls. And within the vortex, the two compasses blazed, their lights colliding, tearing at Howe's fate. Chapter 11. The torn sails and the hanging figures. Howe jolted awake, his body drenched, shivering as though he had just been dragged from the depths. When he opened his eyes, he found himself sprawled upon the vast deck of the ship, shrouded in thick, suffocating fog. The whirlpool was gone, as if it had never existed. The wind howled, tugging at the tattered sails, their ragged cloth snapping with sharp, ghostly sounds. The torn canvas was soaked dark, stained like funeral shrouds drenched in blood. Howe pushed himself up. The planks beneath him oozed with dark streaks, glistening wet, dripping tap, tap, onto the boards, each drop resounding like a heartbeat. Then he saw them. Bodies, dozens of them, dangled from the masts, each hung by frayed ropes, swaying gently in the wind. Their faces were ghastly pale, eyes bulging, tongues lolling obscenely from their mouths. Some corpses still dripped blood, droplets splattering onto the deck below. Howe's chest clenched, his breath caught when he recognized them, 3 fishermen from the village. The ones who had vanished days earlier. Their dead eyes stared wide, fixed upon him, lips quivering with faint, rasping whispers. "Greater than, Howe, save us?" He staggered back, terror choking him, but the ropes suddenly groaned, tightening, stretching downward like serpents. They writhed toward him, snaking around his legs. Howe screamed, struggling as the ropes constricted. From above, the corpses began to move. Their arms dropped, fingers gnarled, reaching for him. The sails whipped violently, revealing a grotesque form in the blood-stained cloth, a vast shadow like a sea monster. Maw opened wide as if to swallow everything. In desperation, Howe felt the small compass in his pocket tremble and blaze. Its needle spun, then locked, pointing toward a dark hatchway at the far end of the deck. Light burst from the compass, and the ropes recoiled. Howe wrenched free and bolted toward the hatch. Behind him, the hanged corpses erupted in hoarse, mocking laughter, their voices carrying across the storm-torn deck. "You cannot escape, you will hang as we do." He plunged into the hatchway. The heavy wooden door slammed shut, sealing him inside, yet the laughter still echoed, mingling with the roar of the sea, as though the ocean itself was mocking him. Chapter 12. The invisible hands dragging into the sea. The hatch slammed shut, and darkness swallowed Howe whole. No moonlight, no wind, only a suffocating gloom, heavy and stagnant like the air inside a tomb. He descended cautiously down the slippery, rotting steps. The stench thickened, sharp with rot and brine, choking his lungs. Each step down brought the sound of plip, plip, water dripping endlessly below. The lantern's dim glow reflected on black water pooling across the floor. It lapped coldly against his ankles, rising slowly as he waded deeper. Each ripple carried whispers that slithered through the dark. "Come down, join us, you cannot escape." Something brushed against his leg. Cold, hard, like bone. Howe froze, then saw a pale hand break the surface, clamping his ankle with a deathly grip. He thrashed, but more hands surged up from the water, dozens of them, grasping his thighs, clawing his arms, dragging him down. Their nails scraped deep, tearing skin, his blood mingling with the seawater. The water boiled with voices screaming in unison. "Sink, sink with us. The sea has claimed you." Howe gasped, flailing, but the harder he fought, the more the hands tightened. The water surged up to his chest. His neck, salty brine gushed into his mouth, burning, suffocating. In desperation, the small compass in his hand blazed with sudden light. Its needle spun frantically, then locked, pointing toward a rusted iron door at the end of the flooded chamber. A faint glow seeped from its cracks, a promise of escape. Howe struggled toward it, tearing free of the clutching hands. But they would not relent. Cold fingers dragged at his shoulders, clutched his back, yanked him under. With a final scream, Howe thrust the compass upward. Its light exploded in a green-white flare, filling the chamber. The ghostly hands shrieked, dissolved into froth, sinking back into the depths. The water receded. Howe collapsed, gasping for air, soaked and bleeding. Ahead loomed the iron door, etched with a symbol carved deep into its corroded surface, a whirlpool swallowing a ship. A freezing wind blasted from the cracks, and the door creaked open on its own. Beyond was only blackness, thick and waiting. Howe knew, if he stepped through, he would descend closer to the abyss. But if he refused, the sea would take him regardless. Chapter 13. The Black Abyss in the Heart of the Ocean. The iron door creaked open, and a blast of cold, fetid air rushed over Howe, stinking of salt, rot, and corpses left too long in the sea. Beyond lay a narrow passage, the floorboards warped and dripping, water pattering constantly from above. Howe advanced slowly, the compass in his grip trembling, its needle spinning wildly. The lantern's faint light revealed strange, bloody symbols carved into the walls, words that seemed etched in madness. Do not descend, none return from the abyss. But it was already too late. The passage ended in a vast chamber hidden deep within the ship's belly. At its center yawned a gaping hole where the floor had collapsed, revealing a swirling black vortex of water. The whirlpool roared like 1,000 screaming souls. Peering down, Howe saw ghastly faces in the current, pale, wide-eyed, mouths frozen in endless cries for help, all dragged in circles by the merciless tide. A violent gust sucked at him, nearly pulling him into the pit. Clinging to the wall, sweat chilled his skin. But far more terrifying was the shadow that loomed beneath the water's surface. Something immense stirred in the depths. It was no human. It was a monstrous shape, its scaled hide glistening, vast tentacles writhing like roots ensnaring countless skeletons. Two green, blazing eyes opened in the darkness, locking onto Howe. A voice thundered through the chamber, not carried by air but vibrating in his bones. Greater than, you have reached the end. There is no turning back. Descend, and belong to me. The compass shuddered violently, its needle blazing as it pointed straight into the vortex. A green beam split the water, and for an instant, the churning waves parted, revealing a colossal stone door sealed beneath the abyss. Etched upon its surface was the same emblem carved into the iron hatch, a whirlpool devouring a ship. Howe's pulse raced. That door, hidden at the bottom of the abyss, was the key to either freedom or damnation. The suction grew stronger, tearing at his body. From the vortex, pale hands burst forth, clawing the walls, reaching for him, dragging him closer. Above the roar, he screamed, "Must I go down there?" Suddenly, the ghost captain appeared across the chasm, his cracked face twisted in a cruel grin, eyes blazing with dead fire. Greater than, you no longer have a choice. The floor beneath Howe gave way. His body plummeted, sucked into the churning black. Chapter 14. Whispers in the Wind, the Secret of the Sea Monster. Howe plunged downward, the roar of the vortex filling his ears. Wind screamed past, mingling with the howls of countless souls. Then, suddenly, the compass in his grip flared brightly, a green halo wrapping around him. His fall halted, suspended above the abyss. The whirlpool groaned, and from the depths came a sound like the bellow of a colossal beast awakening. From every direction, whispers rose. At first they clashed, overlapping and incoherent, but as Howe strained to listen, they wove into words. We were betrayed, we were sacrificed, our flesh fed it, the monster beneath. Terror seized him. Below, the shadow grew clearer, a grotesque sea creature. Its enormous body glistened with black scales, dozens of tentacles coiling outward, binding human bones within their grip. Its green, flaming eyes opened wide, fixed upon Howe. It was no spirit. It was real, a monster nourished by human blood for over a century. It was the very source of the curse, the reason the ship and its crew were damned. The whispers grew louder, anguished. Greater than, the captain betrayed us. He fed our souls to the beast for treasure and power. But the sea cursed him, condemned him to guard, to feed it forever. Howe trembled as the truth sank in. This ship was no vessel, but a floating coffin, carrying sacrifices to the sea monster. Then, the captain appeared beside him once more, grin splitting his withered face. His voice boomed, cruel and commanding. Greater than, you heard them. Now choose. Offer your soul, or become my successor. He raised the great compass. Its green beam lashed into the vortex, and the monster bellowed, tentacles thrashing, waves crashing against the ship. But at the same time, faint voices rose from the souls chained within. Don't believe him, break the seal, destroy the beast. Howe's own compass glowed fiercely, colliding with the captain's compass in a blaze of light. Sparks exploded, the chamber shaking violently. The sea roared, the monster thrashed, the captain screamed into Howe's skull. Greater than, you cannot resist. Your blood belongs to the sea. The deck above groaned, ropes snapped, sails shredded in the storm. The entire ship howled like a dying beast. And Howe realized, the final struggle had begun. Chapter 15. Wrecks piled high and the knocking from below. The deck shuddered violently, throwing Howe off balance. When he opened his eyes, the scene before him had changed completely. The ghost ship seemed to have drifted into a different sea, one darker, one where not even moonlight shone. All around, dozens of shipwrecks loomed from the water, their broken hulls, splintered and rotting, piled atop one another, forming a vast graveyard of vessels. Masts jutted into the sky like skeletal arms, and from the torn rigging hung fishing nets tangled with human bones. The sea was eerily still, smooth as a black mirror reflecting the wrecks. The silence pressed down like a weight. Howe crept across the deck, lantern trembling in his grasp. From afar, he noticed them, black seabirds, hundreds of them, perched motionless along the broken masts. Their eyes glowed red, fixed upon him in chilling unison. Then came the sound. Knock, knock, knock. It rang from beneath the planks of the deck, directly under Howe's feet. His breath caught. Kneeling, he pressed his ear to the wood. The knocking continued, slow and deliberate, as though someone below was tapping in rhythm. He raised the lantern, peering through the rotted gaps, and saw an eye, milky white, unblinking, staring straight up at him. Howe cried out, stumbling back, but the knocking multiplied, spreading. Soon, the entire ship graveyard reverberated with the sound, hundreds of knocks beating in unison. The silence shattered into a dreadful symphony, echoing like a death march. The planks quivered beneath him, voices rising with the rhythm, the wailing of lost souls bound within the wrecks. Bubbles rose from the black water. Then came hands, pale and shriveled, clawing at the ship's sides. Faces emerged, swollen, purpled, eyes bulging, mouths gaping in eternal screams. From within their hollow chests, the knocking continued, like drums of the drowned. Howe staggered back, choking on fear. Greater than, no, impossible, all of them, the ones who vanished. The compass in his hand rattled violently, its needle whirling before locking upon a hatch in the deck beneath him. A faint green glow seeped from its cracks, illuminating trails of dried blood smeared across the boards, leading straight to it. Suddenly, all knocking ceased. Silence returned, deeper than before. Then, with a groan, the hatch burst open. From the darkness below came a guttural hiss. You are the next sacrifice? Chapter 16. The bloody path through the rotten corridor. The hatch yawned open, exhaling a gust of icy air thick with the stench of death. Lantern in hand, Howe descended, his heart pounding like a war drum. At once, the reek of blood overwhelmed him, so sharp and metallic it made him gag. The lantern's glow swept across the corridor, and his breath caught. The floorboards were smeared with blood, dark trails dragging along as though someone had been pulled down the passage. Clawing in desperation, on the walls, deep gouges scarred the timber, scratches from fingernails, dried with blood. Some were so clear they preserved entire handprints, frozen in the moment of terror before being dragged away. Howe's legs trembled as he forced himself forward, each step squelched with a sickening squelch, as if he walked upon congealed flesh. Glancing down, he saw it was not only blood, but ragged scraps of human skin, torn and clinging to the planks. The lantern flickered. In the wavering glow, Hao suddenly glimpsed a shadowy figure at the far end of the corridor. Thin, limp, hair matted and dripping, covering its face, it shuffled forward, leaving a fresh trail of crimson behind. Hao froze. Breath lodged in his throat. The figure stopped, then slowly raised its head. From behind the curtain of wet hair, a face emerged, skin corpse white, eyes hollow black pits, its mouth tore wide, splitting unnaturally to the ears. And a rasping laugh poured out. Greater than you will be nothing but blood upon the floor, like all the rest. Hao screamed, bolting down the corridor, yet no matter how far he ran, the hall stretched on endlessly. From the walls, bloody hands burst forth, clawing at his clothes, raking his flesh with jagged nails, leaving trails of fresh blood across his skin. The whispers rose louder, overlapping in 1,000 voices. Go on, to the end of the path, where your blood will join the sea. At last, he collapsed, gasping for breath, but the compass in his grip flared, its needle locking onto a black iron door at the corridor's end. The glow forced the bloody hands to retreat, and the door creaked open, groaning like a dying beast. Inside stretched a vast chamber bathed in red light. At its center stood a banquet table, laden with corpses arranged like dishes, and around it sat ghostly figures, silent, eyes wide, staring directly at Hao. Then came the hoarse, mocking laughter, this time from all directions. Welcome to the Feast of the Dead. Chapter 17. The Red Lanterns and the Feast of the Dead. The iron door groaned open, and at once a crimson glow flooded over Hao. He stepped into a vast hall, its rotting timbers stretching high above like the ribs of a colossal beast. From the ceiling, dozens of red lanterns swayed, their flames green and unnatural, flickering like blood clots dripping with fire. The air stank of burnt flesh and rotting blood. At the center stretched a long banquet table, covered not with food, but with human remains, severed arms, cracked skulls, splintered bones slick with half-rotten meat, all arranged like grotesque offerings. Blood pooled upon the cloth, thick and dark, overflowing to the floor. Around the table sat scores of figures. They wore tattered sailor's garb, their flesh gray and shrunken, eyes rolled white and lifeless. Yet they sat upright, motionless, their wide eyes locked onto Hao. He staggered back, his chest tight. Behind him, the door slammed shut, sealing him in. Then came a sound, scrape, as the chair at the head of the table shifted. From the shadows emerged the ghost captain, cloaked in rags, his dead eyes burning with green fire. He took his place at the head, raising one hand in command. Immediately, all the seated corpses lifted their heads at once. Their jaws opened, leaking dark blood, and with skeletal hands they reached for the remains before them. The sound of teeth tearing flesh and bones snapping filled the hall. Crunch, crack, gnaw, a cacophony of the damned devouring their eternal meal. The captain fixed his gaze on Hao, a grin tearing his pale face. Greater than, you have come to the banquet of the sea. All of these souls once dared to defy me, and now they feast at my table forever. He clapped his hands. At once, space cleared at the table, an empty seat beside him. The chair scraped across the floor, groaning, beckoning Hao forward. Greater than, there is a place for you as well. The captain hissed. Hao's legs grew heavy. An unseen force tugged him toward the seat. The corpses turned their heads, eyes glowing faintly, their mouths dripping with black rot, grinning with twisted hunger. But then the small compass in his grip rattled violently, its glow blazing. The needle spun before locking upon a small iron chest placed at the far end of the table. The light seared across the hall. The captain's grin faltered, his eyes flaring with sudden rage. He snarled, greater than, do not touch it. That chest is forbidden. Yet Hao's arm moved as if compelled, reaching toward the chest. At once, the feasting corpses shrieked in unison, chairs toppling as they lunged from the table, their claws and teeth bared, racing toward him. The Feast of the Dead had become a hunt. Chapter 18. The iron chest sealed with ancient talismans. The dead surged toward Hao, shrieking, their hollow eyes blazing as they clawed across the banquet hall. The stench of rot filled his lungs, suffocating him with every breath. Heart-hammering, he forced his way past them, stumbling toward the iron chest at the far end of the table. The small compass in his hand shone fiercely, casting beams of ghostly light that split the darkness. The chest was blackened with rust, its surface mottled and slick with salt. Dozens of talismans were plastered across its lid, their ink faded, their paper stained with dried blood. From within, a chilling aura seeped, so cold it pierced to the bone. Hao reached out. The chest quaked violently, the talismans trembling as if alive, each one shrieking with the hiss of the wind. Behind him, the captain's voice roared, shaking the timbers. Greater than, do not touch it. That chest binds the soul of the beast. If it is opened, all will be destroyed. But another voice pierced Hao's mind, frail yet filled with anguish, layered with countless whispers. Greater than, break the seal, free us. The blood and chains only feed the darkness. Pain seared his skull, the clash of voices threatening to tear him apart. Hao clutched the compass tighter, his knees buckling. The feasting corpses closed in, mouths dripping with black slime, their grasp only steps away. The compass flared, needle locking upon the chest. A green beam cut across the talismans, and with a sharp hiss, the first one ignited, burning to ash. Beneath it, a whirlpool-shaped sigil glowed black, driven by something greater than fear. Hao pressed the compass to the rest. One by one, the talismans burst into flame, their ashes filling the hall with a stench of scorched flesh. When the final talisman burned away, the chest groaned, chains rattling as though resisting. Then, with a deafening crack, the lid burst open, a crimson light spilled out, flooding the chamber. From inside, a skeletal hand draped in seaweed thrust upward, clutching desperately at the air like a prisoner clawing free. At that moment, the corpses shrieked in unison, their bodies writhing before collapsing into heaps of ash. The captain roared in fury, his eyes flaring with green fire. Greater than, you fool! You have broken the curse's chains. You will pay with your soul. The entire ship trembled, its timbers groaning in agony. From the chest, the skeletal hand dragged forth something vast, its shape still hidden in shadow. Chapter 19. The Second Storm, when the sea rises in fury. The moment the skeletal hand reached out from the chest, the entire ship shook violently. Beams splintered, ropes snapped, and the timbers howled like a living beast in agony. Above, the night sky convulsed, clouds thickened black, swallowing the stars. Lightning slashed the heavens, thunder cracking so loud it shook the sea. A storm had risen, greater and more violent than before. The sea boiled, waves towered like mountains, crashing against the ghost ship, drenching the deck with icy spray. Hao was hurled to the planks, gasping as the compass's dim glow flickered in his hand, nearly extinguished by the storm's wrath. From the chest, a shadow surged upward, a colossal figure with blazing green eyes. Every movement it made sent shockwaves through the sea. Tentacles writhed, slamming onto the deck, splintering masts, coiling around shattered timbers. Upon the storm-lashed deck, the captain appeared, cloak whipping violently in the wind. He raised the great compass high, his voice booming, blending with thunder. Greater than, awaken, beast of the abyss, swallow this soul, and grant me power eternal. The sea monster roared, its cry drowning the storm, its tentacles lashing across the graveyard of wrecks surrounding the ship. Splintered hulls and broken masts erupted from the waves, pulled into the whirlpool of chaos. Clinging to the ship's side, Hao coughed up seawater, blood mixing with the brine on his lips. The small compass rattled, its needle spinning wildly before locking upon the bow of the ship. Where a faint glow beckoned through the storm, he staggered forward, forcing himself through the waves that battered the deck. Behind him, the captain's voice thundered, shrill with madness. Greater than, you cannot escape. This sea is your grave. A lightning bolt split the mast, exploding wood into shards. The deck lurched, splitting apart. From the vortex below, the monster's vast form rose higher, its eyes burning like emerald fire. Hao pressed on, clutching the compass like a lifeline. The glow grew brighter, leading him to the bow. And there, through the spray and lightning, he saw a figure bound in black iron chains, kneeling in despair, its form half human, half shadow. Chapter 20. The Bound Spirit and the Truth of the Ship. Hao staggered toward the bow, waves pounding his body, nearly sweeping him into the sea. The compass's green glow pierced the storm, guiding him closer. And then he saw her. At the very tip of the ship knelt a figure bound in chains of black iron. Her body shackled by rusted links etched with ancient runes. Her frail arms were stretched tight, her eyes hollow yet still glimmering faintly with humanity. It was a woman, her face pale, her long hair drenched, clinging to her shoulders. Despite the marks of torment, her beauty still lingered, though shadowed with sorrow. When she heard his steps, she lifted her head, her voice trembled, yet carried clearly through the storm. Greater than, at last, you have come. You are the only one who can break these chains. Hal froze, clutching the compass tight. Who are you? Why are you bound here? The woman closed her eyes, her words flown like the mournful wind over the sea. Greater than, I was the wife of the captain, the man you have seen. He bargained away his crew, his own soul, and, even me. He fed us all to the beast for treasure and power. I tried to stop him, but I was the first sacrifice. Her tears ran black, streaking her pale face. Greater than, the curse turned this ship into a floating grave. He became the keeper, doomed to bind souls and deliver them to the monster below. And I was chained here, forced to witness the endless blood he spilled. Hal's chest tightened, his breath shallow. He thought of the pleading voices, the corpses swaying from ropes, the pale hands clawing from the sea. All of them, victims of the curse. The woman's voice broke through again, urgent, pleading. Greater than, that compass you hold, it was once mine. Only it can shatter the seal, break these chains, and the souls will be freed, but you will face the beast itself. Lightning split the sky. The captain appeared at the stern, eyes burning, cloak flailing like torn wings. His voice boomed like thunder. Greater than, do not listen to her. She lies. Keep the chains, and live. Defy me, and you will drown in the abyss. The ship moaned as the storm raged, ropes snapping, planks splitting. Above, the pale corpses swaying from the masts opened their eyes in unison, their hollow stares fixed on Hal. The compass in his grip glowed fiercely, the needle pointing unerringly toward the chains. His hand shook as the voices of the drowned rose once more, crying out for release. Between the woman's desperate plea and the captain's furious command, Hal stood trembling, knowing this was the moment of choice. Chapter 21. Betrayal and the Final Sacrifice. Lightning split the heavens, tearing jagged scars across the sky. The ship pitched violently, its mast groaning as the sea heaved in fury. At the bow, Hal stood trembling, caught between the chained woman and the raging captain. The captain's voice thundered, his hollow eyes blazing green fire. Greater than, do not break the chains. Look at the sea, it will devour you if you do. Leave it bound, and I will grant you immortality. You will command the ocean itself. The woman wept, her chained hands quivering as she cried out. Greater than, do not believe him. He betrayed us all. He sacrificed his crew, even me, to feed the beast. If you refuse to break the seal, the cycle will never end, and you will take his place. From above, the corpses dangling from ropes suddenly writhed. Their dead eyes snapped open, glowing white, their jaws dropping wide as if to scream. The ropes creaked, swaying violently. Then came the sound, knock, 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 reverberating through the deck, louder and faster, like the pounding of a funeral drum. The captain lifted the great compass high. A circle of green fire spun across the deck, glowing like a ritual seal. He roared, greater than, the time has come. Your soul will complete the sacrifice and bind the beast forever. Then I will be free. Hal's stomach clenched. The truth hit him like a blow. The captain too was cursed, bound by his own treachery, and now sought to use Hal's life to break free of his fate. The sea monster bellowed beneath the waves, its tentacles thrashing, striking the hull. Water surged onto the deck, washing over Hal's legs, pulling him closer to the ritual circle. The compass in his hand rattled, glowing fiercely, its needle stabbing toward the chains binding the woman. A blazing green light burst forth, clashing with the captain's compass in a blinding storm of sparks. The woman screamed above the gale, her voice the cry of 1,000 souls. Greater than, break the chains. Only then will this curse end. If not, we will all remain prisoners of the sea. The captain lunged forward, his skeletal hands clawing, his eyes wild with fury. Greater than, no, you will not take this from me. You will die here. Waves thundered, the ship roared, corpses shrieked from above, and in that moment, Howe knew the final confrontation was inevitable. Chapter 22. The cry of the infant from the ship's hold. The sea raged, the monster roared, and the captain's voice boomed in madness. Waves slammed against the hull, ropes snapped, timbers groaned, and then, through the chaos, another sound pierced the storm. A baby's cry, high-pitched, fragile, yet so sharp it cut straight into Howe's chest. Wah, wah, wah? His blood froze. Here, amidst the dead and the damned, how could there be the cry of a newborn? The sound echoed from beneath the deck, from the ship's hold directly below his feet. Howe bent low, lantern shaking in his hand. Through the cracks in the planks he saw it, a tiny cradle of rotting wood, drifting upon the black water. Inside lay a small, twisted form swaddled in tattered cloth. Its skin was pale green, its eyes glowing crimson, its mouth open wide as it wailed ceaselessly. Howe's breath caught. The infant was no living child, it was malformed. Its face split with cracks as though it might crumble to dust at any moment. The chained woman at the bow screamed, her voice breaking into sobs. Greater than, that child, was mine. He cast it into the sea, to feed the beast. Its cries have haunted this ship for 100 years. The captain's laughter rose above the storm, harsh and furious. Greater than, silence. It was the first sacrifice, the anchor binding every soul to this vessel. If it is freed, the seal will break, and the monster will devour the seas themselves. The infant's cry turned shrill, growing into a chorus of wailing. Each cry reverberated like blades in Howe's skull. 1,000 children screaming at once. The compass in his hand rattled violently, its glow blazing until it shone through the floorboards, casting light upon the cradle. The infant's cry faltered, shifting into a pitiful moan, yet filled with bottomless grief. Howe trembled, his heart torn. If he released the child, the seal would shatter, and the abyss would rise. If he left it, the curse would continue, and he would surely be claimed as the next sacrifice. The chained woman sobbed, her voice breaking with desperation. Greater than, please, free my child. Let it finally rest, it has suffered too long. The captain shrieked, his voice twisted with rage as he brandished the great compass, the deck blazing with his ritual circle. Greater than, no, you will take its place. Your blood will bind the sea. The ship lurched violently, masts split, planks tore free. From the depths, the sea monster rose again, its tentacles coiling around the hull. The infant's cry grew louder, echoing across the storm like a death knell. The compass in Howe's hand flared blindingly bright, its beam striking through the floor, enveloping the cradle. He raised it high, his voice breaking in defiance. I will end this, once and for all. Chapter 23. The Phantom Bride on the deck. The infant's cries slowly faded, swallowed by silence. The sea stilled, the storm paused as though the world itself held its breath. When Howe lifted his eyes, the deck had changed. Through the lantern's trembling glow, he saw a bride standing silently before him. She wore a tattered white gown, its fabric soaked with seawater, stained with moss and salt. Her veil hung low, concealing her face, but behind the sheer cloth gleamed hollow eyes glistening with black tears. In her arms she cradled the empty cradle, rocking it gently, her lips murmuring fragments of a lullaby. Greater than, sleep, my child, sleep now, the sea will carry you away. Each note quivered through the planks, and the ship itself groaned, weeping with her lament. Howe staggered back, but the compass in his hand shuddered. Its needle locked onto the ghostly bride. Its glow burned brighter, revealing her face beneath the veil, the very woman who had once been chained at the bow. But the chains had fallen. She stood free, her sorrowful beauty intact, her presence both mournful and unyielding. Her voice broke through the silence, hoarse yet resolute. Greater than, I am his bride, the one he betrayed. He cast away our child. He gave me to the abyss. He sold the souls of his crew. And thus, this ship became a coffin, cursed to drift forever in blood and shadow. Her eyes blazed with grief and fury. Greater than, but now, you have broken the seal. You heard my child's cry. You have brought us to the end. I will guide you to the final judgment, or we will both be devoured by the sea. A furious roar tore across the deck. The ghost captain emerged from the storm, cloak tattered, his eyes blazing with emerald fire. His voice shrieked like steel tearing apart. "Greater than, liar, traitor, you will not end this. This ship is mine, forever." Waves exploded against the hull, and the sea monster's tentacles reared high, coiling around the shattered masts. The bride lifted the empty cradle, her tears streaming black down her cheeks, her voice carrying through the storm. "Greater than, there is only one way. Cast the betrayer into the sea. Only his soul can set it." Hao stood trembling, the compass glowing like fire in his grip. Before him, the bride, her sorrowful plea. Behind him, the captain, his rage boiling like the abyss. The ship shook violently, the storm returned in fury, and the monster bellowed from below. Hao realized, the final choice could no longer be delayed. Chapter 24. The final breath in the sea that swallows all. The sea roared, lightning split the heavens, and the ghost ship heaved like a beast in its death throes. The monster's tentacles lashed across the deck, splintering masts and tearing ropes as the storm swallowed everything. At the bow, Hao clung to the trembling planks, the compass burning in his hand. Before him stood the phantom bride, clutching the empty cradle, her eyes blazing with grief. Behind him, the captain shrieked with fury, the great compass in his hand glowing with the sickly green fire of the abyss. "Greater than," the captain roared. "You cannot escape, your blood will seal the curse, and I will be free." "Greater than," the bride cried out, her voice breaking with tears. "No, cast him down, only his soul can end this torment, only then will we be free." The corpses dangling from the masts writhed violently, their mouths opened in silent screams. The deck quaked under Hao's feet as if the ship itself fought to stay alive. He fell to his knees, blood dripping from fresh wounds, his breath ragged, yet in his hand, the small compass glowed fiercely, its light clashing with the captain's like two stars colliding. Memories flooded Hao's mind, the missing fisherman, the bloody handprints, the endless knocking, the child's cries, all pointed to one truth: the captain was the source of the curse. Summoning his last strength, Hao staggered to his feet and screamed into the storm. "You are the final sacrifice." He thrust the compass forward. A blinding green beam burst from it, striking the captain square in the chest. The captain shrieked, his body cracking like shattered porcelain. Smoke poured from his wounds as the great compass in his hand split apart, shards scattering into the storm. His scream rose into the sky before his form crumbled into ash. Consumed by the sea wind, the chains binding the ship snapped, splintering into fragments of light. The bride lifted her face, black tears turning to clear, her form glowing faintly. She held the cradle high and whispered softly, "Greater than, thank you. My child and I can finally rest." Her body dissolved into white mist, vanishing into the storm with a final lullaby. The monster below let out a deafening roar. The ship split apart, timbers bursting as seawater poured through every crack. Tentacles thrashed one last time before the abyss dragged everything down. Hao's body was hurled into the waves. Saltwater filled his lungs, the storm crushed his breath. In his fading vision, the compass still gleamed faintly in his hand, guiding him into the darkness. Then the sea swallowed him whole, and all was silent. Chapter 25. The ghost ship returns to the fishing village, the endless cycle. The sea lay silent after the storm. The thunder ceased, the lightning faded, and the waves smoothed into glass. It was as if the chaos had never happened. On the shore of the fishing village, the people gathered, their faces pale with dread as they stared out across the horizon. "Another storm," they whispered, but it ended too soon. And young Hao, he still has not returned. A child pointed to the distance, voice trembling. "Look, a boat." Through the rolling mist, a decayed vessel drifted slowly toward shore. Its timbers were blackened and rotten, its sails torn to shreds, its nets dripping with moss and seaweed. The villagers stepped back, fear tightening their throats. An elder's voice shook as he cried, "Gods above, it has come back again." The boat creaked as it touched the sand. No crew, no blood, no sound of life. Only one thing lay upon the deck, a small compass. Its green light had gone dark. A fisherman bent to pick it up, but dropped it instantly with a cry. The chill that surged into his hand was colder than death. The compass spun once, its needle locking again, pointing steadily back out to sea. That night, the village was restless. Some swore they saw the silhouette of a young man standing on the bow of the ghostly vessel. Eyes empty, staring into the mist, and from far out on the waves, carried by the wind, came the sound. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through the night, hollow and ceaseless, a dirge of the drowned. The villagers shivered in silence, for they knew the curse had not ended. The ghost ship would sail again, seeking new souls to claim, until the sea's thirst for blood was quenched. The endless cycle continued.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.